HR's time, especially those who are the only ones in their department, are often consumed with reviewing and staying on top of ever changing wage and hour laws and principles like the FLSA. So today, SHRM's Jennifer Chang and I will be covering how solo HR can better understand and apply the right FLSA policies. Let's get right into it. Perfectly leads me into this first section, talking about how to understand and apply the right FLSA specific policies. So I want to point to this first slide. Let me pull it up very quickly. So this slide, obviously talking about HR and FLSA compliance protocols. We're looking at the classification of employees, monitoring work hours, minimum wage compliance, overtime calculations, and record keeping. So Jennifer, my question for you is, what are some key FLSA policies that you would highlight for those who are the only ones in their HR department within these shift-based industries, retail, manufacturing, hospitality, and so forth?
Sure. Yeah, I would just make sure that the basics are covered. Just get back to the bare bones of the FLSA to start. So ensuring that everyone is paid the correct wage per minimum wage regulations, whether that's the federal or if the state is more generous. Ensuring that overtime is being paid correctly. And that time is captured correctly. So folks who are non-exempt, that when they're working, that work is being captured as compensable time so that they are paid accurately.
Definitely. Are there any resources that HR should look into to kind of better understand specifically these FLSA laws?
Oh, sure. So the Department of Labor is a great resource, and they actually have an FLSA overtime advisor, and it's almost like a quiz you can take. So you can go through the different questions to see what's required of an employer in a particular situation. SHRM also has a ton of great resources. We have what we call HR Q&As that have charts in them that show, for example, when time is compensable for travel for non-exempt employees, because that gets kind of hairy. And then we also have toolkits that walk employers through how to calculate overtime. For instance, if there's, normally it's just 1.5 times your annual, or not your annual, but your regular rate of pay. But what happens if you worked 3 different kinds of shifts and had 3 different kinds of pay in a work week? So they cover those kind of scenarios as well.
That's a really good point. I think the idiosyncrasies within these laws are really where a lot of HR departments, specifically those who are the only ones in this HR department, in their department, where they trip up. There's a lot of nuances to these laws and regulations. And as you said, they are constantly changing. So making sure that you are staying on top of it. I know for me, something that's been really helpful is setting Google alerts whenever there is something with, FLSA, wage and hour, overtime, anything like that. I set these alerts so it actually comes up right in my inbox and like a nice, neat little folder kind of just right in my email inbox. And I get to see it every morning to see, kind of comb through if there's any changes. So yeah, that's another great resource. I highly recommend that.
That's a great idea. I didn't think about doing that.
Yeah. Oh, it's really good. And, Google does a great job of just kind of compiling it in a nice condensed way. It's great. Very much recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah. I also, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, please finish your thought. I would love to hear
I was just going to say, I also recommend checking reputable law firms, subscribing to their newsletters. That helps too. Anything that you can automate, I think is a great way to handle compliance issues if you're an HR department of one. Because it's hard to make time to go out to the interwebs and figure out what's what and what's new. So anything that can be automated, so it just is automatically delivered to your inbox, is just a great way to handle things.
Automation is definitely huge on our side of things, on workforce.com side of things. It reminds me of a client that we have, Reef, and they are a parking company. So they pretty much rent out these lots all over the country, and they have over 18,000 employees. They're huge, right? Over 10,000 locations. it's a lot of people to kind of manage, a lot of different locations, a lot of different rules and regulations across the states. So they actually have a Chicago location that requires Fair Work Week standards under the Department of Labor, as you might know of. And Workforce actually just automates those requirements automatically in their schedule. So it actually helps Reef over, on their HR side of things, or HR generalists, to automatically have those labor specific requirements in their schedules just for the Chicago locations, and wherever Fair Work Week standards apply. I know it's not just outside of the Chicago area, it's also California, all that stuff. So again, automation is key. Whatever you need to do to actually, utilize it to your advantage, do that, because this is something that, HR is juggling a lot, and compliance is just one of those principles that they need to handle. And there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, it's a very, very hefty load to carry for the company, for sure.
It is. It feels it felt very overwhelming to me when I was in HR department of one.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't do it right, the company could face fines from the Department of Labor or state departments of labor. There's just such a liability there. Employees could not get paid correctly. All kinds of stuff could go sideways if you're not on top of it. So no pressure.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it feeds me perfectly in my next question. How can HR double check that they're actually applying the correct regulations to their businesses and even business locations?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would suggest joining SHRM. I'm not a salesperson, but I think we are a fantastic resource because one, you can just look at the website to see what's going on and how it applies to what organizations. For instance, certain sick leave laws only apply if you have an organization that's a certain size. So you can quickly check that to say, oh, well, I only have 10 employees, so this doesn't apply to me. We all have, you can also call the Knowledge Center if you ever have any questions about things. I also recommend teaming with the C-suite and legal counsel if that's available to you, just to have buy-in from the leadership, which I think is critical. It sounds dry and boring. Compliance just does. But I think putting numbers behind it and showing folks in the C-suite what could go wrong if these measures aren't in place, I think that's really helpful. So they understand the big picture. You're not just laying down the law and enforcing regulations. Like, this is for the betterment of everybody. And then contacting legal counsel as well, just to make sure that the regulations are interpreted correctly and they're being enforced correctly in the workplace and applied correctly, not enforced correctly. But yeah.
I think that's a great point. We actually had a webinar a couple months ago on how to get buy-in, how HR can lead from the front. And I think that's such an important key of teaming up with other teams outside of just the HR department, especially when you're the only one there. It's a little hard to look to yourself to know exactly what to do, right? So exactly, teaming up with legal, even if it's outsourcing that, because I know a lot of these smaller companies, of course, don't have an in-house legal team. So of course, looking to other resources, like Jennifer said, right? Looking at websites, subscribing to newsletters, even contacting them and seeing if there's a rate that you can get them to advise, and making sure that you guys are compliant with those regulations that are applicable to your business based on your state, of course. So in terms of these smaller teams, right, a lot of these solo HRs are building up these protocols really from the ground up, because there's nothing there when they get there, right? They're walking through the door, somebody hires them and they're like, perfect, can you build up all these compliance protocols? So Jennifer, my question for you is, do you have any recommendations here on how to build a solid compliance protocol or program really from the ground up?
Well, first of all, start by taking a deep breath.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing.
That goes for everybody.
That goes for everything. Not everybody.
Let's just all take a moment.
Sometimes when you walk into, let's say you become the HR person, the HR department for a small business who has not had HR before. I would say, one, take things one thing at a time. I know for me in particular, I look at everything that needs to be fixed, and then my brain just goes haywire.
Yeah.
So rather than looking at this giant to-do list, just do one thing at a time. Get one thing right, and then move on to the next thing. I would start with I-9s, making sure that everybody has an I-9 on file, and those that may need to be re-verified, that all of their documents are on file and correct, and they're good to go. And then go from there. Once that's done, make sure that everyone's got correct tax forms, offer letters, all of that, company policies, and get that solid. And then move on to the next thing. But just one bite at a time. That's way easier said than done. I know.
I mean, honestly, even everything you just mentioned, we have our like onboarding feature on our side, and it actually automates all of that for you. So again, if we're going back to the theme of automation, it's talking about, there's that checklist within the onboarding feature that can quite literally get an employee onboarded in 3 minutes compliantly, like completely compliantly. There's no mishaps there. So they get their employee handbook, they get all their forms, W-4, I-9, whatever it is that you have, they get that all sent out to them. They fill it out, get it back to you in an automated way, and all on technology, on the desktop, on your phone, whatever it is. And I mean, it makes life so much easier. We've had such good feedback since rolling this out, and it's been amazing. And just in terms of, again, lowering that admin work is absolutely huge, and taking those one steps at a time, just making sure you're making those baby steps. I mean, this is essentially the same thing as one giant step forward, though, instead of kind of making it that little, incremental. And you have more time to build up those programs from the ground up and start auditing those programs, auditing your processes that might already be in place as a HR department of one. So whatever it is that helps to kind of, again, take that burden off. Thank you so much for watching that segment from our webinar on how to stay compliant when you're an HR department of one. If you would like to watch the full webinar, click this video here and be sure to subscribe for more content like this.